Chapter 71 Locating the Moonstone Gem. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. As Isroth swam through the Orcalian Trench, he did not come across that legendary boss Skagmag again. Maybe it was never really there from the very beginning, and what Isroth experienced was just something left behind by Skagmag. After all, it would explain how a legendary boss could be in such a low-level dungeon. However, that was simply a theory. While he was swimming, Isroth used the opportunity to view the skill he received from Skagmag before he was made to watch the events that previously unfolded inside the throne room. He did not have a chance to inspect it before experiencing what appeared to be an event from the past. Skill name: Skagmag's Whale Song. Skill level: maxed skill rank. Unknown. Active. Unleashes Skagmag's Whale Song, dealing 25,000 damage to all enemies within a 100 meters radius. This skill ignores all enemy defenses. Uses: 0/4 Special note: this skill can only be used while inside of the Dungeon Sea Palace graveyard. Boss level monsters damaged by this skill do not grant the user EXP or loot drops. A temporary active skill that deals a fixed amount of damage. It only has 4 uses, but what purpose does it serve? To Isroth, the system would not randomly gift him such a powerful temporary active skill out of the kindness of its heart. It also did not make sense that it was just to make the dungeon easier for him to clear. Wouldn't he be able to defeat any boss instantly with this skill? Though when he thought about it, the deterring factor of using it against a boss was that the player would not gain any EXP or receive loot drops from it. One of the main reasons players ran dungeons was to level up and acquire better gear. Why would they give up a profitable target like a boss monster just for some additional damage? Even though it could only be used a total of 4 times, it still deals 25,000 damage that ignores all defenses and has no cooldown time to it. That's a grand total of 100,000 damage at his fingertips. If he acquired this skill before his fight against Calder, it would have been an instant kill. Even if Isroth used the second baneful sword kill with lightning field and landed a critical strike, he would still be unable to deal 25,000 damage, let alone 100,000 damage. Then again, he could just be overthinking things, and everything that occurred was simply a normal part of this dungeon. Isroth had no way of telling until he completed the dungeon, which is exactly what he plans on doing. Isroth was currently following the same path as the numerous rainbow coral fish. Not a single one of them drifted off on a different course. It appeared that something was pulling them towards the same location. Although the Orcalian Trench was massive, there were really only 2 choices for players to make when it came to which way to swim. They would either have to travel down or forward. Isroth chose to go forward due to 2 reasons. The first was that the rainbow coral fish is the only proper source of light in this trench. If he were to take a chance and swim off from near them, then it may prove challenging for him to find his way around, even with his heightened senses. The second reason was just a small gut feeling of Isroth's. After swimming for 10 minutes straight, Isroth almost started to believe that maybe he chose the incorrect way and the rainbow coral fish was taking him nowhere. The time on his temporary passive skill equalizer was being wasted, which was problematic. However, the surrounding waters started to warm up. Isroth noticed all the rainbow coral fish swimming into a large crevice. There was a warm blue light coming from within the crevice, which was surprising given how bound to darkness this place appeared to be. When Isroth arrived in front of the crevice, he saw that the light seemed to be emitted from the symbols carved onto the walls. The pressure of the water was shooting up like an underwater geyser. When the rainbow coral fish swam into the crevice, the pressure from the underwater geyser made them travel upward. The crevice was more than large enough to accommodate several players at once. Isroth swam into the crevice and began to follow the same path as the rainbow coral fish before him. His journey up the geyser was fast and short-lived, as he was soon shot out of the water and into the air by the pressure from the geyser. System alert. You have entered the region Nerida's Cavern. Nerida. Isroth remembered that it was the name of one of the 14 individuals within the throne room he viewed a while back. Specifically speaking, it was the name of one of the people called out by Kashish to accompany her to what she referred to as the Overside World. Since he was currently inside of the underwater world, Isroth could hypothesize that the Overside World Kashish was referring to signified the land outside of the water of this sea. Isroth examined his surrounding environment and realized that he was inside of an underwater cavern. The location he was shot out of by the geyser closely resembled that of a lake with many stones protruding out of it. He adjusted his body and landed safely on a sizable stone that was nearby. Scattered around the cavern were crystals that were solid white in solid. There was nothing special about them besides the huge amount of them and the fact that they appeared to provide a natural source of lighting for the cavern. The cavern was spacious and had pathways that one would be able to walk on, however, they were narrow and only 2 players would be able to fit side by side at the same time. The rainbow, coral fish were swimming around in different sections of the lake. They were not moving any further as if they had successfully reached their intended destination. There was a trail of stones that were spaced apart from one another that lead deeper into the cavern. The stones were big enough for someone to step onto, but it would be easy to lose one's balance trying to jump from one to the next. Isroth, however, had to trouble as he followed the trail of stones. The deeper he ventured into the cavern, the more numerous the crystals. It was as if Isroth was getting closer to the source of whatever was causing these crystals to form in this location. There's something here. Isroth felt a strong source of energy nearby. It most likely had something to do with the creation of the crystals inside of Nerida's cavern. He could feel the presence of multiple creatures up ahead, which for Isroth was a good sign. It meant that he was on the right path and he would be able to put the equalizer skill to use. There were no sea creatures within the Orcalian Trench besides the rainbow, coral fish and that colossal legendary boss, if it was really actually even there in the first place. Therefore, he was looking forward to his encounter with these sea creatures. When he reached the end of the stone trail, there was an open and quite spacious area. However, that depended on how one would define spacious. While the area itself was sizable, white crystals covered up nearly every part of it. At the center of the room was a huge white crystal that at least 20 times the size of all the other crystals. Though there was something unusual about this crystal. There was a small oval dot-shaped stone with a faint glow placed inside of the very center of the crystal. The sapphire gem within Isroth's inventory suddenly started shaking intensely. It was trying to get Isroth's attention and he immediately understood the reason why. That small oval dot-shaped stone was definitely one of the gems he required in order to travel to a deeper level of the underwater world. Judging from its familiar appearance, it was the Moonstone Gem. It looked just like a normal moonstone gemstone except, there were tiny crystals floating around freely inside of it. Found it, though I doubt they'll just let me walk up and grab it without a fight. Hiding amongst the crystals were monsters that would be challenging to spot for most players. The creatures blended in with the surrounding crystals, however, there was a distinct difference that would allow players with good attention to detail to differentiate between the two. Isroth examined the creatures and as he expected, their HP was not that impressive. But what really surprised him was exactly how unusually low its HP was. Usually, monsters that launched sneak attacks would not be well known for their durability, but this was a little extreme. Its HP was actually less than that of a level 15 mountain golem. This is what made it so that Isroth would not let his guard down, as monsters like this tended to possess specific traits to make up for that weakness. If its HP was that low, then that meant its strength in other areas would be boosted greatly. Either that or it's a pack. Name: Inglipsum Crystal Walker, Elite, Level 21 HP 3350, 100%. After further scrutinizing his surroundings, Isroth discovered that the Inglipsum Crystal Walkers were each in groups of 8. Isroth wasted no time and immediately engaged the closest group on the way to the Moonstone Gem. Kriya Reet. The Inglipsum Crystal Walkers made a strange screeching noise. It sounded as though someone was dragging their nails down a chalkboard. After having their cover blown, the monsters turned into a dark green color and revealed their true appearance. Their appearance was the fusion between a lizard, fish, and bird. They possessed rough-looking scales covering their entire bodies and was around 1.3 meters in length. Their eyes were similar to that of a reptile and they had extremely sharp claws. Its tail made up nearly half of its total body length and morphed into that of a fish. Like tail fin when it showed itself. On its back were a pair of small wings that could not have spanned more than 75 centimeters. It hardly seemed to be durable enough to allow these creatures to fly. Even though their HP is extremely low for a level 21 elite, each of them still has 3,350 HP. It'll be a bit troublesome to fight each group one at a time. In total, there were at least 20 groups of 8 Inglipsum crystal walkers. But, if Isroth wanted to grab a hold of the Moonstone gem, he only needed to defeat 5 out of 20 of the groups. Isroth thought about using his newly acquired skill, Skagmag's Whale Song, to clear out all of the creatures. However, after thinking about it for a bit, he decided that it was best to hold off on using the skill for now, as it may come in handy later on. There was another reason why he preferred to use his own abilities. It was due to the fact that Isroth could feel that he was extremely close to breaking through to the next level of the heavenly golden body physique. He was just a half-step away from reaching the next stage. In order to level up the heavenly golden body physique, Isroth needed to experience actual battles. The last time he managed to make progress on the skill was during his fight against the boss in the Dungeon Goblin's Paradise. Since then, Isroth had already journeyed throughout the dangerous mountain regions, to the Shadahi realm, fought against a rare boss, and was currently soloing a newly discovered dungeon. After being in so many battles, he just needed a little push until he managed to make a breakthrough. I'll use this opportunity to advance to the next stage of the heavenly golden body physique. Luckily, Isroth simply needed to drop each creature's HP down to a certain amount before using his first baneful sword. Destruction skill. After all, now that it was maxed out, as long as Isroth eliminated a monster using the skill, the cooldown on it would reset. Isroth unsheathed his blade of lightning and began his assault against the Inglipsum crystal walkers. Meanwhile, not too far from Amaharp in a village called Ramutin, a meeting was taking place amongst 10 players. One of those players was someone Isroth had personally met. He was a member of the top guild known as Blue Oasis, Niflheim. 7 of the players present, including Niflheim, were the 7 captains of the Blue Oasis Guild. 2 out of 3 of the remaining players were the guild leader and vice-guild leader of Blue Oasis. The last player was just a low-ranking guild member with no real standing. Though that may improve after the information he just delivered to the upper echelons of the guild. Are you sure? You realize the consequences of betraying our trust, don't you, Vanter? The one who spoke was Niflheim. He was speaking to the lowest-ranking guild member present. The reason Niflheim was verifying the matter for the 3rd time was that this low-ranking guild member was a part of his squadron. It would reflect badly on Niflheim as a captain if one of his own members led him and the entire guild on a wild goose chase. However, if there was a single thing Niflheim was confident of, it was his ability to judge the character of a person. The player who came to him with this information was not one to make such wild accusations with no evidence. Of course, Captain. You have my word, there really is a territory that's going to be available to claim soon. Chapter 72, Obtaining the Moonstone Gem. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It just doesn't make any sense. It's too soon for a territory to be available, especially this early into the game. Something doesn't add up. One of the captains who went by the name of Abstract gave their opinion on the matter. From the voice alone, one would have a difficult time telling if Abstract was a male or female. Their figure and face were also well hidden due to the assassin-style cloak Abstract was wearing. The guild leader, vice-guild leader, and the other 6 captains all agreed on that point. It was baffling to them that a territory would reveal itself this soon to be claimed. According to their knowledge and research, it should not be for at least another 6 to 8 weeks until the first small territory would be up for grabs. However, a part of them did not want to completely dismiss the possibility. After all, if it was true and they ignored it, all the players present would feel endless regret if another guild managed to claim it before them. There were many benefits to owning a territory, that as a top guild, Blue Oasis would be more than capable of taking full advantage of those benefits. A steady and stable source of income from the taxes, being able to set up a base of operations, and most importantly they would be the first guild to do so. Most players did not remember the name of the person who did something second or third, but rather those who took action first. If Blue Oasis could indeed claim the first piece of territory, then it would put their reputation in RML a step above that of the other top guilds. I am sure I speak for everyone present when I say that we all have some doubts about this. The one who spoke this time was the guild leader, who was known by the name Asgard. He was a handsome man who appeared to be in his early to mid-20s with short black hair, dark green eyes, and he gave off the aura of someone that people naturally wanted to show their respect to. Therefore, I wish to assign this task to Niflheim. After all, Vanter is under his command and he was the one that came across this information. If he finds undisputable proof that what Vanter says is true, then we'll mobilize every single member of Blue Oasis that we have to claim that territory. I assume no one objects to these arrangements. Everyone remained silent to show their approval. This matter was too delicate to discuss over long-range channels and therefore had to be discussed in person. Normally, the gathering of all 7 captains was an incredibly rare event. If the matter wasn't so important, then no one would have come to this meeting. No one wanted to waste time chatting when they could be leveling up. If Niflheim did not have the trust and respect of his guild leader and fellow captains, then it would have also not been possible. Niflheim stood to his feet. I'll start immediately. Leader, Vice.Leader, everyone. Niflheim gave a respectful nod to his fellow guild members before turning his head to Vanter and signaling with his eyes that it was time to leave. All of the other captains also stood to their feet getting ready to leave. Wait for a second, Niflheim. The guild leader approached Niflheim just as he neared the door. You have another task for me. Niflheim stopped to face the guild leader. The guild leader shook his head. That's not it. I'm sure you've heard the rumors too, right? That player you met back in Opal Town hasn't made any big displays lately. Could it be your intuition was wrong this time? Niflheim was silent for a moment, however, he soon responded with a small grin on his face. Leader, I'm never wrong when it comes to trusting my guts. If you were there in person you would understand better. That guy. He's one of those hidden dragon types without question. Isroth palm shot out in multiple directions, striking all 8 of the Inglipsum crystal walkers he was currently in a fight against. Using the skill Myriad elusive palms, Isroth struck the area just on the back of the monsters' heads. Isroth already cleared out 15 out of 20 of the groups and was at the moment facing off against his 16th group. Although each monster only gave 800 EXP, after defeating an entire group of Inglipsum crystal walkers, Isroth earned 6,400 EXP. Thanks to the effects of his equalizer skill, that amount was doubled to 12,800 EXP. So far, he managed to obtain a grand total of over 190,000 EXP and level up 3 times in the process. However, Isroth's temporary passive skill equalizer finally ran out after he defeated the 15th group of monsters. Also, once he reached level 20 the amount of EXP required to level up made a huge jump. While he was below level 20, even if he gained a level the EXP required to progress to the next level only went up by a couple thousand. But, once Isroth reached level 20 the EXP value went up by at least 30,000 EXP per level. That was a large difference in the way the EXP was scaling. Having fought against over 100 of these creatures, Isroth had already uncovered the best possible method of dealing with them and became aware of their vital points and attack patterns. If the creatures were too close to the moonstone gem located at the center of the room, they would constantly regenerate HP. Isroth also had to lure some of the groups further away from the moonstone gem while avoiding other monsters, therefore, it took him a while to properly clear out 15 groups. However, after getting the hang of it and with the number of total monsters decreasing, it was becoming much easier to maneuver around the room freely. Noel.N critical hit, 0.506.506. At this rate, the heavenly golden body physique will reach the next stage after I clear out this batch of monsters. Even though it's taken a bit longer than expected, it should not be much longer now. The Inglopsum crystal walkers were incredibly fast and agile. The power behind their attacks was not the scariest part, but rather the poison they released. Having to face 8 of these creatures at the same time would be a nightmare for any party, especially if the party was unprepared. Even Isroth was hit by their poison a few times in the first few fights. This was because the creatures had different ways to release the poison from their bodies. Though after going through all of the different variations and tricky ways that the Inglopsum crystal walkers could release their poison, Isroth had not been hit by it since then. Although the Inglopsum crystal walker's HP was not as much as the yellow, razored Kurko sharks or even a level 15 mountain golem, its scales seemed to provide a decent amount of defense. Isroth knew this because he was doing less damage overall to these creatures than the yellow, razored Kurko shark earlier. His guess is that they most likely have a physical resistance passive skill. After whittling away the Inglopsum crystal walker's HP, it dropped low enough for Isroth to make his next move. He slashed outward with his blade of lightning as it unleashed an oppressive aura. He used the skill First Baneful Sword Destruction and sliced one of the Inglopsum crystal walkers on the lower part its back near its tail. Critical hit, 234 Battle Alert. The cooldown time for your skill First Baneful Sword Destruction has been reset. Just as Isroth finished executing his attack against the Inglopsum crystal walker, one of the other creatures bolted towards him with its sharp claws swiping at his head. Many of the other monsters also launched out at Isroth during his attack, but he had already grown accustomed to their attack patterns. Isroth had his eyes closed as he leaned slightly to the left, evading the first incoming attack. He wanted to rely on his other senses as he felt himself breaking through to the next stage of his heavenly golden body physique. When the First Baneful Sword Destruction cooldown time reset, Isroth instantly swung his blade to meet yet another one of the Inglopsum crystal walkers and eliminated it in the process. Kriri-eat. The creature cried out before falling over motionless. Isroth would repeat this process until all 8 of the monsters were successfully eliminated. When his blade of lightning sliced through the last remaining Inglopsum crystal walker from that group, Isroth received a system alert. It was the alert he had been waiting for since he began his fight against the creatures. System alert. Congratulations, the skill Heavenly Golden Body has increased by +1 level. Skill name. Heavenly Golden Body Skill Creator. Isroth Skill Level 2 out of 10 Skill Rank. S Passive. The more the user of this skill battles the stronger their body becomes, permanently raising all of their stats. Enhances all user senses by 110%. Current stat buff. HP, 500 ATK. 50 Def. 50 AGI. 50 Description. A skill created by Isroth, the more the user battles the stronger they become over time. Special effect. This skill cannot be leveled up using skill points, the user must experience many battles to further advance. Isroth could feel a refreshing feeling flowing throughout his entire body as he broke through to the next stage of the Heavenly Golden Body physique. Even though it only increased my senses by 10%, the effects should be greater since I've consumed the 5 cycles pill. The stat increase is somewhere around what I predicted it would be. Overall, Isroth was satisfied with the end results. Although there was much more to the Heavenly Golden Body physique, he was currently at the early stage of it. The more he advanced, the more his Heavenly Golden Body physique would show its true power. Isroth scanned the room for the 4 remaining groups of Inglipsum crystal walkers. Even if his equalizer skill already ended, he would not give up such a nice source of EXP. He charged over towards the remaining groups of monsters and finished clearing out the rest of them. In the end, he obtained 25,600 EXP from the last 4 groups. As for coins, each creature only gave Isroth 20 bronze coins. Therefore, he earned a total of 32 silver coins. Unfortunately, the monsters did not drop any additional items or equipment that he could use or sell. Isroth then looked over in the direction of the Moonstone gem. He walked over to it and reached out his hand to grab it. As soon as he touched the gem, it vanished from within the large crystal and appeared inside of his inventory. System alert. You have received X1 Moonstone gem. The item has been added to your inventory. Name: Moonstone gem, dungeon item, rank: none usage. This Moonstone gem releases a strong aura which causes white crystals to form around it in great quantities. When used together with its counterparts the Sapphire gem and Aquamarine gem, it allows its possessor to pass through one of the deepest levels of the underwater world. Special note: by itself, this gem does not have any value or use. If this gem leaves the Sea Palace graveyard, it will be destroyed. With this, I have 2 out of 3 of the gems required to venture into the deeper levels of the Sea Palace graveyard. Now, all that I'm missing is the Aquamarine gem. Not too far ahead of Isroth, located on the opposite side of the room, was an underwater geyser similar to the one he used to arrive inside of this cavern. He'd already examined the surrounding area and realized that when he grabbed onto the Moonstone gem, the geyser activated and started erupting upward at certain intervals. Isroth moved over towards the geyser, stepped onto it. A few seconds later it pushed him upward through a long tunnel. It did not take long for him to reach the exit. He was shot out of the geyser and landed safely on his feet. He did not receive a new region alert from the system, therefore, he must still be within Nerida's cavern. Why does this place feel so restricting? Chapter 73 Gravity Pocket. Down the center path you are listening at Novel Full. Audio. System alert. You have entered a level 1 gravity pocket. A level 1 gravity pocket. Strange, my body feels heavier than usual here. Isroth furrowed his brows when he received the system alert. This was something he had no prior knowledge about. He'd never heard of a gravity pocket within RML. Though from the effects alone, it was easy enough to come up with a conclusion of what purpose it served. Isroth felt as if he was carrying another person around due to the increased gravity. It would be difficult for players to adapt to the sudden shift in gravity. However, thanks to Isroth's heavenly golden body, the transition only provided him with mild discomfort. When he took his first step forward, he received yet another system alert. After reading over the alert, Isroth finally grasped what was behind this level 1 gravity pocket. System alert. You have received a quest. System alert. Since you are not in a party, the quest rank has been increased. Do you wish to accept the quest? Quest name: Gem of the Sea. Recommended level 21. Recommended party size 3.4. Quest rank B. Quest objective: venture into Nerida's cavern to retrieve one of Nerida's scale located near the deepest part of the cavern, past the gravity pocket caused by a mysterious gemstone. Once you've obtained a Nerida's scale, you must place it inside of the Dreaming Wave Pond to purify the corruption devouring the scale's essence. Time limit: none. 0/1. Retrieve one of Nerida's scale located past the gravity pocket. 0/1. Take one Nerida's scale and place it inside of the Dreaming Wave Pond. Reward: X 10 silver coins. Aquamarine gem. 0.5000 EXP. It's the last gem that I need in order to enter into a deeper level of the underwater world. Although the EXP is not all that great, it's not too bad for something that was originally AC. Ranked quest. Given the rank of the quest, it should not be too difficult to retrieve the scale and obtain the aquamarine gem. As Isroth took in his surroundings, he noticed 3 separate paths. There was one path directly in front of him, one path to his left side, and the last path was located on his right side. Above the paths were different numbers carved onto some type of metallic alloy plate. The plate on the left side had the number 1 written on it. The plate straight ahead of Isroth had the number 5 written on it, and the last plate to the right had the number 3 written on it. Isroth did not have any clue as to what these numbers meant until he approached a nearby sign with writing on it. It gave a description of what a player would go through depending on which of the paths they decided to take. The path located on Isroth's left side was the easiest path, however, it was also the longest path. Players traveling through that path would only have to deal with the increased gravity, but according to the sign, it would take at least 1 hour to arrive at the next location. There was also some powerful restriction magic in place on the pathway that prevented players from moving above a certain speed. That meant players who decided to venture down that path could only move slower than they were used to, not faster. Isroth immediately dismissed this option. After all, why would he want to waste an hour walking down a path? This path was probably for players that could not make it through the other 2 paths. I wonder what path those players from Cross Haven chose. Isroth then examined the second listed pathway, which was the one positioned closest to his right side. This path was perfect for most players to take as long as there was a person within the party capable of being agile and resourceful enough to reach the end. The right path was filled with various traps, and there were certain parts of the pathway that made it difficult for someone to maintain a proper footing. If one made too many mistakes, then they could end up dying and having to respawn all the way back to the beginning of the dungeon. However, the best thing about this path was that only one player within the party had to successfully reach the other side. As long as that player was successful in reaching the other side, then the path would open up for the rest of their party members to cross unhindered. This path doesn't sound all that bad. I wonder if the traps are similar to the ones I encountered at Goblin's Paradise. Isroth was confident that with flickering steps and shadow movement active, it would be as easy as breathing going down that path. However, the path that caught his attention the most was the one located just ahead of him. Interesting. The center path would be the fastest way to arrive at the other side. However, there was just one problem. While it did not have any traps, it was safe to say that players with weak willpower would want to stay far away from it. According to the sign, the center path was a level 2 gravity pocket. From the level 1 gravity pocket alone, Isroth already felt as if his body weight had doubled. A level 2 gravity pocket may not be as simple as tripling his body weight, however, he understood that the system would not create something that was impossible for players to do. Although the level 2 gravity pocket will be a bit troublesome, I believe that it will not cause any major issues. However, isn't it still a bit unreasonable to create a path like this? What grabbed Isroth's attention were the words siren call. It did not give too many details about the siren call, however, it did mention that players would have to go through a constant willpower check. If it were only the siren call, then there was not anything to worry about, but Isroth did not have the proper skills in his arsenal required to deal with the creatures lurking in there. Located along the center pathway were creatures known as spectral jellyfish. They resembled the ghost-like jellyfish creature Isroth had observed when he was shown the throne room, Trestix. However, they were much smaller in comparison and did seem as powerful. The creatures were completely immune to all normal physical attacks and could only be damaged by magical or energy-based attacks. The only energy-based attack Isroth had in his arsenal at the moment was the skill's second Baneful Sword. Kill. Although the second Baneful Sword Kill was a powerful energy-based attack, the cooldown time on it was too long. Even if the cooldown time was reduced by 50% after killing a target, it would not suffice. Furthermore, there was not a 100% chance of the skill cooldown resetting. Isroth also had the lightning damage from his lightning field skill, however, that skill only lasted for 10 seconds. Who knew how many spectral jellyfish were lurking on the pathway? Of course, he could always just use Skagmag's whale song, but would it be worth it? The center path is the quickest way, but if that's all there was to it, then I would be better off choosing the right path as it complements my current skill set. However, I can't ignore the last sentence on that sign. The last sentence for the center path made Isroth curious. Written on the sign was. It was vague and did not say what the gift was, but Isroth knew that the gift rewarded would be equal to the given task. I'll try the center path. If things get a bit complicated, then I'll just use Skagmag's whale song as a last resort. Isroth decided he would journey down the center path and take the risk for a potential reward. Besides, he was far from worried about a test of willpower. His mind, body, and soul were all strength to a ridiculous level, especially when compared to the average person. He highly doubted the system took into account someone with his level of willpower. After all, compared to the arduous path of cultivation, this could be considered as child's play in comparison. Isroth walked towards the center path, and when his foot stepped onto the pathway, he immediately felt a crushing weight pushing down on his entire body. As he predicted, this was much more than a simple tripling of body weight. He felt as though the gravity had increased tenfold compared to the time before he entered the level 1 gravity pocket. System alert. You have entered a level 2 gravity pocket. Even though the level of the gravity pocket only increased by 1, it's around 5 times greater than the level 1 gravity pocket. It feels as if an invisible force is trying to crush me. I wonder, what level do gravity pockets go up to? Isroth was calmly walking step by step down the center pathway. Each step left a deep footprint in the ground beneath his feet. From the outside, it looked as though Isroth was just casually going for a stroll. However, the truth was that he was currently traveling at his top speed without the use of any movement skills. His current agility stat was at 300 after he reached the second stage of the Heavenly Golden Body and invested 7 of the 18 stat points he earned from leveling up into his agility stat. He also put 7 of the stat points into his attack stat and the last 4 into his HP stat. The system was more unreasonable than Isroth originally thought. To ask players to withstand such pressure while going through constant willpower checks from the siren call, and deal with the spectral jellyfish that were immune to physical attacks was far from easy. Though that was a good thing for Isroth, as the harder the challenge, the larger the reward for completing it. After walking through around a third of the pathway, Isroth suddenly heard a soft singing voice. It was alluring and seemed to call out to him. When he ignored the call, it began to turn into a loud high-pitched scream with a frequency high enough to shatter glass. It was the siren call that he'd read about on the sign outside the pathway. System alert. You have successfully passed a willpower check. The further into the pathway Isroth traveled, the more intense the siren call became. That was not all that changed. When he reached the halfway mark, he could see a spectral being with the head of a jellyfish rise up from underneath the ground. Ukiek. Isroth narrowed his eyes as he observed the creature that appeared before him. It was the spectral jellyfish that he was warned about. Name: Spectral Jellyfish, Elite, Level 22 HP 9450, 100%. It has more HP than expected. Isroth figured that the monster would be like the Inglipsum crystal walkers that he fought not too long ago and have low HP because of its normal physical attack immunity. However, its HP was almost comparable to the yellow, razored Krurko sharks swimming around Calder's Reef. Not too long after the first spectral jellyfish appeared, another one phased through from the ceiling. It did not stop there, and 2 more phased in from the side walls. In just a few seconds, Isroth was being approached by 4 spectral jellyfish. While they were numerous and had high HP, their agility was not impressive at all. They were only moving slightly faster than Isroth, who was being weighed down by the level 2 gravity pocket. Since they were spectral beings, Isroth knew that it was unlikely that the monsters would be affected by the gravity pocket the same way he was. Therefore, their agility stat had to be somewhere between 35.50 If not for the gravity pocket, these spectral jellyfish would not be a threat to almost any player with above-average agility. Isroth activated his flickering steps as the spectral jellyfish were hovering closer and his agility instantly shot up to 1,200. Though while inside of this gravity pocket it felt more like 120 agility. However, that was still more than twice as fast as the spectral jellyfish. System alert. You have successfully passed a willpower check. The screeching siren call grew even louder than before as Isroth was growing closer to the exit of the pathway. The number of spectral jellyfish also began to grow, with at least one spawning with every step Isroth took. The 20 seconds on Isroth's flickering steps skill did not last that long, but he managed to cover a good amount of distance. There was just one small issue: there were over 50 spectral jellyfish following closely behind him, and the number was only increasing every second that ticked by. Will I have to use Skagmag's whale song after all? Just as Isroth was getting ready to use his last resort skill, he saw a bright light slowly forming up ahead. As Isroth closed the distance to the bright light, the sound generated by the siren call became so loud that it started to create sound waves which attempted to push Isroth back and away from the bright light. However, it was not enough to make him falter. Isroth passed the final willpower check, and just as the spectral jellyfish were about to reach him, he managed to safely arrive at the location that was emitting the bright light. When he stepped into the bright light, the spectral jellyfish vanished as if they were never there to begin with. The siren call had ended as well, and that high-pitched screeching noise slowly faded out. System alert. You are no longer within a gravity pocket. The pressure pushing down against Isroth eased up once he left the pathway and arrived inside of a small room. The first thing Isroth noticed was a gorgeous pink scale resting upon a bed of lovely pure white pearls, but there was something unusual about the scale. There was a dark corrupted aura being emitted from it that felt incredibly familiar to Isroth. Isroth frowned when he felt the familiar sinister aura. This aura. Doesn't it belong to the Shadahi? Why is it being released by a scale located so far away from the Shadahi realm? Chapter 74 Dreaming Wave Pond. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That sinister aura was something Isroth was extremely familiar with. This was because while inside of the Shadahi realm he could feel that it was lingering throughout the entire atmosphere. Isroth figured that whatever Shadahi infected the scale, it could not have been recently. This was due to the fact that the Shadahi were currently sealed away in their own realm. In order to bypass the seal on that realm, Isroth needed the S-ranked magical item that the Seer Terrorestia lent him, the Boundary Sealing Sphere. He had no way of knowing for sure, but he was doubtful that there were many items like the Boundary Sealing Sphere around. While it was not impossible, it was highly improbable. Another reason he believed it to be so was due to the events which took place in the throne room that he observed. Kashish was not the only mermaid inside of that throne room. There was one more mermaid with sparkling pink scales on her tail. Isroth did not manage to get a good look at her because of the angle at which he was spectating the events at, but he was positive that the mermaid he saw there was the same Nerida whose name was called out by Kashish. It was also safe to say that it was the same Nerida who this cavern was named after. He walked over towards the scale resting upon the bed of pure white pearls and grabbed a hold of it. When the scale touched his hands, he felt cold energy trying to gradually drag him under its influence. Strangely enough, he did not receive a willpower check alert from the system. System alert. You have received X1 Nerida's scale. System alert. 1/1 Retrieve one of Nerida's scale located past the gravity pocket has been completed for the quest Gem of the Sea. Isroth took a moment to scan the small room he was in. He was looking for something that the sign outside promised him once he successfully reached the end of the center path, a reward. However, there was nothing in sight that appeared to be any kind of reward, and he did not see anything in the system logs indicating that he had been rewarded. Could it be that even though I have reached the end of the pathway, I was unsuccessful in completing it? Isroth furrowed his brows, thinking back to the words written on the sign. He remembered every single word on that sign. There was no other instructions or requirements as to what he needed to do in order to have cleared the path successfully and obtain his reward. In that case, there was only one plausible explanation, and it was that he had yet to reach the true end of the pathway. I've left the gravity pocket and the spectral jellyfish have stopped chasing me. The siren call has ended as well. Is it still possible that the path continues on past this room? There was only one way to find out. Located just behind the bed of pearls was a door with strange carvings on it. It resembled the same carvings that were on that statue of Kashish back when Isroth first entered into the Sea Palace graveyard dungeon. He opened the door, and as he did, it made a small creaking sound as though this particular door had not been used for countless years. When he stepped through the door, it immediately closed shut on its own. Isroth tried to open the door, however, it did not budge. It seems I have no choice but to continue moving forward. In front of Isroth were a flight of stairs that led down into darkness. There was no form of lighting, and so it was very difficult to see the steps beneath one's feet. If one were not careful enough, then it would be fairly easy for them to lose their balance and fall down the flight of stairs. However, a little bit of darkness was not enough to impede Isroth. He swiftly traveled down the stairs, and when his feet touched down onto the bottom of the stairway, Isroth felt himself being pulled underneath the ground below. He was slowly sinking into the ground and was unable to break free of it. It's like I'm trapped in some sort of quicksand. Though this is more troublesome to break free of. Unable to escape from the quicksand-like ground, Isroth resorted to using the skill shadow movement. He instantly turned into a dark shadow before leaving the area of the sinking ground and traveling forward at a high speed through the tunnel. While in this shadow form, he could move around freely and did not have to worry about running into that sinking ground again. Even though Isroth possessed heightened senses, he was unable to detect the sinking ground. Since there was no movement or activity going on within the ground itself, there did not seem to be anything off about the surroundings. After all, it was still impossible for him to see through the earth or solid objects. I suppose that sign was not kind enough to include everything. The walls began to tremor and they started closing in on Isroth. Thanks to his skill shadow movement, he could stay in the shadow form for up to 30 seconds while having his agility increased to 600. That was plenty of time to make it to the end of the passageway at his current speed. On the ceiling of the tunnel, a few sharp-pointed objects began to materialize out of thin air. They fell down from the ceiling as Isroth was moving forward, however, he skillfully evading them just before the objects were able to hit him in his shadow form. If he were to take damage while using shadow movement, then it would forcibly cancel his shadow form. Isroth spotted a faint glowing light up ahead. It was coming from a small square platform releasing magical energy. In just a few seconds, Isroth reached that platform with plenty of time to spare. The walls had not come anywhere near to closing all the way due to how fast Isroth traveled in such a short period of time. While this type of trap may be dangerous to the vast majority of players, it was not a problem for Isroth, who had personally experienced places many times more life-threatening than this tunnel. After successfully making it to the square platform, Isroth's shadow form was automatically cancelled as his body began to turn into countless bubbles. The square platform beneath him emitted a luminous light and it felt as if he was being carried off to another location. Where is this place? When the bright light died down around Isroth, he appeared before a beautiful pond. The water inside of the pond was constantly sparkling and it released a refreshing aura that made one feel rejuvenated. There were no monsters or other life forms within the water and there was not a single drop of contamination. He could feel his body that was scattered into countless bubbles, converging and rematerializing at a single point. This pond is even more flawless than the Lake of Tears. Although the pond was not that large in size, only spanning a few meters, that did not make it any less impressive than the Lake of Tears. When Isroth's body finished materializing, he received an alert from the system. System alert. Congratulations, you have successfully cleared the center path. System alert. You have received X1 Underwater World Treasure Chest. Name: Underwater World Treasure Chest, Soulbound, Rank. Rare usage. Contains a single preserved common, uncommon, or rare relic of the Great Kashish Sea inside. Common item chance. 20% uncommon item chance. 50% rare item chance. 30% special note. This chest is rewarded to those who manage to successfully complete the center path inside of Narida's cavern located within the Sea Palace Graveyard dungeon on their first try. This item is soulbound and cannot be traded or sold. This item cannot be opened while inside of the dungeon Sea Palace Graveyard. It was the reward he'd been waiting for, ever since taking on the most challenging of the three paths. The chest showed the chances of obtaining a rare item which could be considered quite high. The good news was that there was at least a 30% chance of him acquiring a rare item. The bad news was that there was also a 20% chance of him receiving a common item. Though the most likely outcome was obtaining the uncommon item, as it had a 50% chance assigned to it. Isroth shook his head after examining the Underwater World Treasure Chest. The system made him go through all of that just for a chance to possibly receive a common item. How cruel would that be if he were to obtain a common item when there was a chance to acquire a rare item? Let's hope that my one luck stat comes in handy. Isroth set the Underwater World Treasure Chest into his inventory for now. After doing so, he approached the edge of the pond. He opened up his inventory and removed the Narita scale from it before placing it down into the pond. The corrupted energy that surrounded the scale became faint before disappearing completely and not leaving a single trace behind. The only thing remaining was the dazzling pink scale that seemed to gain a new breath of life when the dark aura was extracted from it. It gently floated to the bottom of the pond. System alert. 1/1 Take 1 Narita scale and place it inside of the Dreaming Wave Pond, has been completed for the quest Gem of the Sea. System alert. Congratulations, you have completed the quest Gem of the Sea. System alert. You have been awarded 10 silver coins. System alert. You have been awarded 5,000 EXP. System alert. You have been awarded X1 Aquamarine Gem. Inside of the Dreaming Wave Pond, a small hexagonal-shaped gem floated up to the surface of the water. It was aqua in color and continually released pulsating energy waves throughout the pond. Just being near the object itself caused one to feel as though they were being weighed down by an invisible force. The Sapphire Gem and Moonstone Gem in Isroth's inventory were shaking as if calling out to that hexagonally shaped gem. The gem rose up into the air and stopped right in front of Isroth. He reached out to retrieve the gem and it felt much heavier than the Sapphire Gem or the Moonstone Gem he previously obtained. Name: Aquamarine Gem, Dungeon Item, Rank. None usage. This gemstone creates powerful gravity pockets outside of its immediate surroundings. When used together with its counterparts the Sapphire Gem and Moonstone Gem, allows its possessor to pass through one of the deepest levels of the underwater world. Special note. By itself, this gem does not have any value or use. If this gem leaves the Sea Palace Graveyard, it will be destroyed. He set it into his inventory with the other gems before looking over at the large metallic door on the opposite side of the room. Positioned in separate areas within the room were 3 circular-shaped discs placed on top of a stand made from a solid stone-type material. Each of the circular-shaped discs possessed a slot in the middle of it that would only fit a specifically shaped object into it. The slot's shapes matched those of the 3 gems Isroth obtained while inside of the Sea Palace Graveyard. When Isroth reached the large metallic door, a hologram was projected in front of him. It was projected by the magical symbols carved onto the door. The hologram was instructions on how to pass through this door and enter into a deeper level of the underwater world. After reading the entire hologram, Isroth remembered back to the moment when he was just about to step into the entrance for this dungeon. Wes had warned him that he would be unable to finish this dungeon alone. It was not because Wes believed he lacked the skills to do so, but simply because of this door in front of him. Isroth finally understood why Wes said those words to him. Now it makes sense. That's why he said it would be impossible for me to complete this dungeon alone. Isroth remained calm despite his current set of circumstances, and he could not help but laugh inwardly. The reason that this would normally be impossible to do alone was due to the fact that in order to enter through this door and into the deeper levels of the underwater world, each gem needed to be set into the proper slot within less than 1 second after another gem was placed in. This meant that if one gem was set into its slot too late, then it would not work and Isroth would be unable to continue on with the dungeon. Normally at this part, a party of players could easily split the gems among themselves and set them into the slots at the same time without issue. But, Isroth was currently running this dungeon solo, and although the room itself was not that huge, the circular discs were still located at least 30 meters apart from one another. Wes would have been correct if it were any other player, however, the player just happened to be Isroth. I might cut it a little close, but it should be possible. Chapter 75 Memories of the Sea 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Isroth removed all 3 of the gemstones he collected from within his inventory. He took a brief moment to closely inspect the circular discs and the shapes of the slots located at their centers. He had to make sure he knew which gems would fit into their respective slots. He then moved over to the stand holding up the circular disc that was positioned on the right side of the room. The slot at the center of that disc had the shape of the sapphire gem, the first gemstone that Isroth obtained after defeating Calder. Let's see. Isroth placed the sapphire gem inside of the slot and immediately after, he dashed towards the direction of the next stand. However, when he was around a third of the way there, he received an alert from the system. System alert. The gemstone sequence has failed. X1 sapphire gem has been returned to your inventory. A little more than 10 meters. That was to be expected. Isroth understood that it was unlikely for him to close 30 meters in under 1 second using only his base agility alone. Based on his attempt just now, he would need approximately 900 agility to successfully make it to the next platform within a 1-second time frame. However, his movements had to be incredibly accurate or else there was a chance that he would miss the gem slot and have to start over again. With flickering steps, my agility will increase to 1,200. It should be more than enough to arrive at the next 2 stands in time. However, the slots are only a few centimeters in size. To be safe, I should use the initial few seconds of flickering steps to attempt some test runs. He did not want to have to wait 3 minutes for the cooldown on flickering steps to reset to try again in case he happened to be unsuccessful. After all, the sign outside of the 3 pathways did not have every single detail of information listed, so maybe what he read on the hologram was only a section of the true requirements. Of course, this was just a speculation. Isroth removed the sapphire gem from his inventory before he walked back over towards its proper circular disc. His figure began to flicker, seemingly in and out of existence, as he activated the skill flickering steps. He traveled swiftly from one platform to the next in the blink of an eye. He made sure to match the correct gem with its respective slot. The results were that on his first attempt, he was slightly off and missed the second gemstone slot. I'll have to adjust for the increased weight of the aquamarine gem. The second slot, which was located more towards the center of the room, belonged to the aquamarine gem. When Isroth tried to place the aquamarine gem into its slot, the mass of the item was having constant fluctuations at the final moment just before it was about entered into its slot. This caused Isroth to be slightly off in its placement. He still continued onward towards the third and final slot which belonged to the moonstone gem. It did not appear to have any issues and went in without any trouble. After all the gemstones were successfully returned to his inventory, Isroth quickly moved to his starting position by the sapphire gem's circular disc slot. He still had 10 seconds left on his flickering steps as he set the sapphire gem into its slot. Immediately after doing so, Isroth accelerated to an unimaginable speed and instantly closed the distance between the first and second stands in less than 1 second. This time he was prepared for the constant shift in weight of the aquamarine gem and did not have any mishaps. He succeeded in placing the aquamarine gem into its slot as he pushed on to the final circular disc. Fortunately, nothing unexpected occurred and he was able to successfully set the moonstone gem into its slot with some time to spare. The entire process took Isroth less than a total of 2 seconds. The afterimages formed from Isroth's flickering steps still remained, lingering at the locations at each stand. But, his real figure had already appeared in front of the large metallic door. There were various unlocking mechanisms that sounded from inside of the door. The magical symbols embedded into the door began to light up one by one as the gemstones which Isroth placed into the circular disc started to emit brilliant lights. Each gemstone released a concentrated beam of energy and all 3 of them struck a colorless gemstone that was located at the top of the metallic door. The whole room was filled with a breathtakingly beautiful aurora light as the colorless gemstone slowly floated into the air. The sapphire gem, moonstone gem, and aquamarine gem all began to gravitate towards the colorless gemstone. When the 3 gems arrived in its immediate vicinity, they began to orbit the colorless gemstone. The rotation of the orbit was becoming faster and faster as every second passed until eventually, the 3 gemstones that were circling the colorless gemstone had appeared to vanish. The colorless gemstone started to gain some color to it. It was not just a single one, but rather a myriad of colors. The now rainbow-colored gemstone crashed into the large metallic door, creating a loud sound that resembled that of a gong. This sound resonated constantly throughout the entire room as the large metallic doors started to open. Isroth could not see clearly what was on the other side, as a luminous rainbow-colored light blocked his sight. He felt as if he were being pulled into a portal similar to the one located at the dungeon's entrance area. Isroth was dragged into the door, as it soon closed shut and the gemstone lost all its brilliance. Where is she? Where is Kashish? Isroth heard a loud voice as he slowly opened his eyes. When he took a look at his surroundings, he realized that he was in a situation similar to last time when he came across Skagmag. The people around did not seem to notice him and he was unable to access his character window. Is this another vision? As he observed the room he was in, Isroth soon discovered the source of the voice. It was the middle-aged man Isroth saw during his last encounter, Skagmag, in his human form. However, the real question was what exactly did Skagmag or whatever was causing these visions, want him to see? What grabbed Isroth's attention more than anything was a figure lying unconscious inside of a giant clam filled with gorgeous sea anemone. The sea anemone was glowing with a light green color as if it were trying to rejuvenate the figure inside of the giant clam. However, no matter how much it tried to, there was some kind of dark and corrupted energy that repelled its attempts. This corrupted energy was covering the figure lying down in the giant clam and Isroth realized who it was with a single glance. Kashish. Her appearance has changed since the last time I saw her. The individual lying down unconscious inside of that giant clam was indeed Kashish, the ruler of the Great Sea. She was engulfed by a dark and invasive cold energy. There was a large claw mark across her stomach region and her once dazzling pure aqua-colored scales were now tainted and had turned pitch black. Although Isroth could not feel the dark energy coming from Kashish, its appearance matched the same corrupted aura attached to the pink scale that he recovered inside of Nerida's cavern. More likely than not, that dark energy unmistakably belonged to the Shadahi. A Shadahi powerful enough to injure Kashish has to at least be as strong as Sixirius. If he took her words at face value, then Kashish and Skagmag should be equal or at least close in strength. For someone to injure her meant that they must have been at least a legendary Shadahi that was around the same level as the sealed one Isroth met during his journey to the Shadahi realm. Sir Skagmag, Her Majesty is in no condition for visitors. The one who spoke was Glekin, however, before he could even finish what he was saying, he was blown away by a powerful invisible force. Glekin flew back coughing up a blue liquid which was probably his blood. Skagmag had a cold look in his eyes, those who block my path will not be forgiven. This is my final and only warning. Who would dare to bar his path after that powerful demonstration? No one interfered as he approached the giant clam which the unconscious Kashish was lying in. After staring at her for a period of time, he suppressed his anger while asking, "What happened?" Skagmag made a promise to Kashish's father, who was like a brother to him, to take care of her. But, even if he did not make that promise, he already considered Kashish as his only family. For her to be injured under his protection, how could he not be infuriated? Everyone was silent as none of them knew how to answer that question. When Her Majesty returned, she was alone and in bad shape. Trestix, Nerida, and Sakad were nowhere to be found. Their current locations were unknown, however, everyone knew that if Her Majesty was in such a terrible condition, then the chances of those three surviving were. Answer me. Skagmag was growing impatient as everyone present remained silent. Glekin's facial expression darkened as he was severely injured from a single aura attack. However, he managed to struggle to his feet. Her Majesty was attacked in the Overside world. Although he was unhappy at being assaulted, after that display he was sure that he could not risk angering Skagmag any further. Where are the three who journeyed with her? Skagmag placed two of his fingers onto Kashish's forehead before furrowing his brows. The corrupted energy was already too deeply rooted. It had completely integrated itself with Kashish's entire physiology. Even if he were to take her to the Dreaming Wave Pond, it would have little effect. Her Majesty returned alone. The fate of the other three are still undetermined, but it's most likely that. Glekin stopped speaking for a brief moment. He did not want to say it as he was afraid it may become a reality. After all, he may disagree with some of the others, but he still respected their strength and undying loyalty to Her Majesty. Glekin finished his sentence, "It's most likely that those three have perished while securing Her Majesty's retreat. Knowing them, even if they had to die, every last one of them would be unwilling to let this harm befall Her Majesty. Their deaths are the only plausible outcome." Skagmag appeared to be lost in deep thought as he continued to examine Kashish. Where are the others? Skagmag turned to look at Glekin. They have gathered their troops and prepared a march to the Overside world. The only reason I did not join them was that one of us had to look after Her Majesty. Otherwise, I would have gladly rushed to eradicate all of those vile surface dwellers. Glekin had a look of endless hatred in his eyes. Fools. All of you, fools. Did every last one of you lose your mind now that Her Majesty is unconscious? Skagmag was furious, however, he could not blame them completely. Compared to him, they were all young and inexperienced. None of them had actually fought against the type of vile creature that inflicted this wound before, and so none of them had any clue who was actually behind this. Are we to just sit here and do nothing while we let them get away with this? Glekin tried to hold back his anger, however, it was becoming increasingly difficult to do so. He was already upset that he could not personally join the battle, and this was only reminding him of his helplessness. Skagmag shook his head before looking back towards Kashish. Her Majesty has tried her best to ensure that war does not happen with the Overside world. She could foresee the disaster that would take place soon, a disaster that no race would be safe from. Yet all of you. Skagmag managed to calm himself down after a while before heading towards the exit of the room. I will try to catch up with those fools. Let us hope that I am not too late and the war can still be avoided. I will find a way to cure Her Majesty. If any additional harm should befall her while I am away, then don't blame me for taking your life. Skagmag then vanished from out of the room. There was an eerie silence that lingered in the room. A beautiful mermaid was still lying unconscious within the giant clam. There was a strange beauty to her resting face. At that moment, she appeared to be peaceful. Before he knew it, Isroth was no longer at the same location. He had arrived in a completely unfamiliar environment. He was also now capable of accessing his character window without any issue. Skagmag, Kashish, those 14 individuals, the Shadahi, and the people on the surface. Something happened between all the involved parties that Skagmag or someone must be trying to show me. Izroth had a feeling that whatever took place here or in the Overside world, was something that changed the fate of the entire underwater world. Chapter 76 Great Sea Palace Outer Layer. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. In the distance was a colossal structure that resembled a sand castle. It was made up of various types of corals, sturdy underwater plants, and many unknown materials. It did not appear to be as luxurious as the palace located within Amaharp, however, it held on to its very own rustic and elegant charm. System alert. You have entered the region, Great Sea Palace Outer Layer. Izroth was currently positioned on top of some kind of underwater cliff. However, he could not move forward any further as the system boundary was set in place. While the colossal sand castle structure was the first thing that grabbed Izroth's attention, it was not the only thing. There were a total of 4 layers surrounding the sea palace. The outer layer, which was the layer that Izroth had been dropped off into by that large metallic door, was the layer positioned furthest from the sea palace. There were 2 middle layers and then the final layer which encircled the sea palace itself. Each layer was surrounded by a gigantic bubble. It seemed to be a barrier of sorts that prevented the layers from interacting with one another. It looks as though the system does not want me to just swim over freely. Could it be that I have to break through all 4 layers to complete this dungeon? Izroth furrowed his brows as he thought about his current situation. It did not make any sense. This was only a low-level dungeon, it should not require so much effort just to clear it. After thinking for a few moments, something suddenly dawned on Izroth. He realized that he may not have to journey through all of these layers in one go. The setup of this dungeon reminded him of some classic MMORPGs. Of course. If that was the case, then everything would make sense. There's a good chance that the Sea Palace Graveyard is not just one dungeon alone. In some classic MMORPGs, some dungeons were linked together and at the same time, split up into different parts. But certain parts would not be accessible until one reached a higher level and they located the entrance. Of course, this was just a theory of Izroth's, however, it would explain many of the unanswered questions he asked himself. There was even the possibility that in the future this could lead to something far more rewarding than a mere dungeon. A raid. Though, the chances were unlikely when Izroth really thought about it. After all, what are the chances that he would come across such a huge discovery? But, everything seemed to be pointing in a favorable direction. Forget it. I'll get the answers when I reach the end. For now, I should just deal with the things as they come. Located not too far from Izroth was a water slide similar to the one he traveled down after defeating Calder. The only difference was that this water slide was much shorter and Izroth could clearly see the bottom part of it. Since the water slide was the only visible way out of this area, Izroth decided to head down. It took less than 10 seconds for him to reach the bottom end of the water slide. When Izroth reached the bottom, there were 2 mermen that closely resembled the Sea Palace guards Izroth had previously encountered. However, these mermen looked much more intimidating and released a battle-hardened aura. Instead of the bronze tridents that the Sea Palace guards used, these mermen were holding onto a silver trident. The silver trident was releasing a faint glowing yellow energy that was comparable to the one Calder used in his fight against Izroth. But, the energy the weapons released was much less threatening than that of Calder's weapon. Izroth examined the mermen that were around 20 meters away from him, standing guard by in front of an entryway that led into the next area. Right now, Izroth had returned to the water environment. This meant that there was pretty much an absolute guarantee that those mermen would receive an agility boost. Name: Sea Palace Imperial Guard, Elite, Level 23 HP, 15,000, 100%. There were no objects to lead them around or any obstacles that would hinder their speed. It was an open room with only one way in and one way out. The 2 guards are too close to each other to fight one at a time. I'll have to be a bit careful during this fight. Even with the effect of the Hellfire-crafted Oblivion chest, it's still highly likely that their base speed will be faster than my own. With the Hellfire Rampage passive skill that was attached to his Hellfire-crafted Oblivion chest, as long as he kept attacking within 3 seconds, he would be able to maintain its total agility boost of 100. Isroth was confident that with the 100 agility added on to his 300 agility, it should be enough to retaliate and react properly. After all, even if he could see the attacks coming thanks to his heightened senses, it was useless if the enemy was too fast for him to react the attack. 400 agility should allow him to receive little to no damage without the use of lightning field or flickering step skills. Isroth unsheathed his blade of lightning. There were little crackles of lightning flowing throughout the entire blade. Now that he thought about it, he was quite lucky to receive a lightning-based weapon and that the closest dungeon was filled with water-type monsters. Isroth swiftly moved forward, and when he was around 15 meters away, the 2 Sea Palace Imperial Guards noticed his presence. It's a surface dweller. Stop right there. Both of the Sea Palace Imperial Guards swam forward at an incredible speed. Just as Isroth thought, the two of them were naturally faster than him while inside of a body of water. One of the Sea Palace Imperial Guards swung outward with their silver trident, releasing a powerful wave of yellow energy. The energy appeared to create a concentrated and pressurized wave of water that looked as if it could slash through solid objects without much resistance. Isroth reacted quickly, and before the Sea Palace Imperial Guard unleashed their attack, he had already begun to make his move to avoid it. The skill the creature used had the same prerequisite action for its skill activation as Calder's attack did for his. So Isroth was prepared ahead of time for the incoming attack. Mississippi. Isroth waited until the 2 Sea Palace Imperial Guards were within 3 meters before a myriad of elusive palms shot out towards them. He aimed for their gills positioned just beneath their ribcage. However, they managed to protect their vital point, which forced Isroth to adjust his attack. While his attack successfully struck, he just barely missed their vital point. 266.266, their agility is a bit higher than I expected. Isroth's agility increased by 20 thanks to the Hellfire Rampage skill after both of his attacks landed successfully, making his current agility 320. The second Sea Palace Imperial Guard lashed out with his silver trident. The merman wanted to cut right through Isroth in one fell swoop. The other merman was not too far behind and had positioned himself to cut off Isroth's path of retreat. Isroth moved his blade of lightning in front of his body to parry the incoming silver trident. Sparks flew when the two weapons collided against one another. Parried. 289. Just as Isroth succeeded in parrying the silver trident, the other merman tried to ram into him. Isroth launched a swift counterattack, slashing with his blade of lightning across the neck of the Sea Palace Imperial Guard who struck him. The merman had not yet readjusted his position after his strike, which made it easier for Isroth to hit his vital point. It was also thanks to the increased agility he was constantly receiving from the Hellfire Rampage skill. Critical hit. 631. After completing his counterattack, Isroth immediately moved off to the side to evade the merman's ram. He quickly spun around, swinging his blade of lightning towards the same merman who just missed with his attack. There were two shadows following behind his blade aimed at the merman's gills. Their attacks aren't that much different from the Sea Palace Guards. However, there is more power behind them and the Sea Palace Imperial Guards have higher HP. Though, that's to be expected this deep into the dungeon. After fighting for around 30 seconds, it did not take Isroth long to adapt to the attack patterns of the Sea Palace Imperial Guards. There were no more surprises or new attacks that they used that Isroth had not already seen. Isroth had managed to reach 10 stacks of Hellfire Rampage, which boosted his agility by 100 points. Right now, his agility was at 400, which made dealing with the two sea creatures less challenging. He pressed on with his assault and was able to eventually defeat both of the Sea Palace Imperial Guards in under 2 minutes. He used similar tactics as when he fought against the yellow, razored Kurko sharks, saving his first baneful sword. Destruction as the final attack so that he could receive the skill's cooldown timer reset. Izroth had only been struck a total of 2 times throughout the entire battle. Though he was able to successfully parry the blows and did not receive any major damage. System alert. Congratulations, you have defeated Sea Palace Imperial Guard. System alert. You have been awarded 6,600 EXP loot drop. 1 silver 85 bronze coins. System alert. Congratulations. The EXP was pretty decent, but as usual, the coins left something to be desired. The entryway that the 2 Sea Palace Imperial Guards were protecting had a thin layer of bubble-like substance protecting it. The entryway would lead one down a long hallway with a huge clear glass cylinder acting as the surrounding walls of the pathway. When Izroth passed through the thin layer of bubble-like substance, he reached the other side and arrived inside of the pathway. To his surprise, the pathway was actually not filled up with any water. Although players did not have their movements impeded while battling in water, it was still a weird feeling if one was not used to it. Therefore, most players would probably want to avoid underwater battles as they just felt uncomfortable compared to fighting on land. Izroth observed the pathway and did not see any other sea creatures guarding it. He walked along the pathway until he reached the end of it. In the room at the end of the path, was a sea creature with the lower body of a human and the upper body of a barracuda. It had beady black eyes and dark scales covering its muscular legs. It was a frightening appearance. However, this individual was someone Izroth was familiar with. It was one of the sea creatures within the throne room in the vision he saw earlier. That particular sea creature was standing next to the one called Glekken with a vicious look in his eyes the entire time. Another familiar face. Though it's strange that such a creature would not fight in the water. Could this sea creature be similar to Calder and change the battlefield during the middle of the fight? There was no platform like the time when Izroth fought against Calder. It was just a rocky ground surface that mimicked the sea floor. Izroth moved close enough to obtain more information about the boss monster. Name: Vicious Barbatos, Dungeon Boss, Level 23 HP, 48,000, 100%. Izroth let out an inward sigh after seeing the dungeon boss. He was beginning to miss the system providing him with all of the creature's stats and skills before the fight began. After all, who wouldn't want such a massive advantage when it came to a boss fight? But, Izroth was never afraid of a challenge. Even though this boss was meant for an entire group of players to overcome together, he did not believe the challenge to be above him. Izroth did not wait any longer as he charged in with his blade of lightning already drawn. Chapter 77 Vicious Barbatos. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Izroth charged forward with his blade of lightning in hand. He remained vigilant, as he did not currently have any sort of understanding about Barbatos' stats. When Izroth entered into Barbatos' range of perception, the sea creature stared at him with those beady vicious eyes of his. Your presence taints the great sea. Death to all surface dwellers. Barbatos instantly went into attack mode and accelerated in Izroth's direction. His speed was faster than Izroth's, but it was still manageable. This was probably due to the fact that Barbatos was not receiving the agility boost that sea creatures usually did because he was not within a body of water at the moment. Its agility isn't going to cause too much trouble. I should have no problem matching its agility once I have the full stacks for Hellfire Rampage active. Barbatos had no weapon in its hands, but instead, it depended on its rows of various sized razor-sharp teeth to rip through its enemies with. Barbatos opened its jaws as it tried to latch onto Izroth and tear him to shreds. Izroth quickly positioned his blade of lightning to intercept Barbatos' attack. His sword was locked in place with the sea creature's mouth. There were sparks flying from the clash as though Barbatos' teeth were made out of an incredibly tough material. Parried, .544, what a high attack stat. It has to at least be around 1000. When Izroth parried the blow, he felt as if a crushing pressure had descended upon him from that single attack. The worst part of it was that it seemed like that was just a basic attack. If a basic attack did so much damage, Isroth would have to be extremely careful as its skills may not be as friendly as its basic attack. Isroth's body began to flicker as copies of himself started to appear throughout the entire battlefield. He activated the skill Flickering Steps, increasing his agility to 1200. He slashed out twice in quick succession at Barbatos. 337.337 After his counterattack, Isroth created a small distance between himself and Barbatos. He consumed a lesser health potion, restoring his HP by 150 points. He did not know the full extent of Barbatos' abilities just yet, and so it was best not to take any chances. Isroth's current HP after consuming the potion was at 1406. It'll be 1 minute before I can use another potion. Though with Flickering Steps activated, it'll give me plenty of time to max out the stacks for skill Hellfire Rampage. Isroth did not wait for too long, as he would risk losing his stats from Hellfire Rampage if he went for more than 3 seconds without a successful attack landing. Right after drinking the lesser health potion, Isroth kicked off his back foot and shot towards Barbatos, leaving behind a series of afterimages. Isroth's Blade of Lightning had 2 shadows trailing behind its blade, as each strike was simply too fast for Barbatos to react properly to in time. Isroth directed his sword towards Barbatos' lower body with the first strike. He then adjusted his attack to aim directly for Barbatos' gills that were located where its neck would be if its upper body was that of a human's, with his second and third strike. Isroth used the first strike of Phantom Strike and forced Barbatos to guard the vital point near the lower end of its body. While Barbatos managed to properly safeguard that vital point, the sea creature was unable to stop Isroth's next 2 strikes from hitting their intended target. 144 critical hit, 0.724 critical hit, 111 Thankfully, while Barbatos possessed an insanely high attack stat, its defensive stat was a different story. It was even weaker than some of the regular elite monsters that Isroth fought earlier on. Though this kind of trade-off was to be expected, after all, if something with such a deadly attack stat also had a sturdy defense, it would be a nightmare. At this rate, it shouldn't take too long to finish this battle. Things were looking up for Isroth as he pressed on with his assault, quickly shaving down Barbatos' HP. Barbatos could only sit back and take the attacks, as every time it tried to hit Isroth, it would instead strike nothing but his afterimage. 94%. 86%. 80%. When Barbatos' HP reached 80%, its eyes started to glow bright red and the sea creature unleashed a bloodthirsty aura. It looked as if it were being possessed by some kind of demonic being with the amount of killing intent it was releasing. Come to me, my brothers. Devour the surface dweller and restore what is rightfully mine. Barbatos shouted in a maddened tone of voice. All of a sudden, the ground beneath Isroth's feet released a few tremors. Before he knew it, water began to fill up the room. However, it did not fill it up all the way, but rather just enough to reach Isroth's knees. Is it happening already? Isroth guessed that the room would eventually be filled up all the way with water like at the end of his boss fight with Calder. However, it appeared the rate at which the water was going to fill up was much faster than it did during his fight against Calder. Swoosh! Chomp! Isroth could hear the sound of something constantly flopping around in the water. It was not long until he began to hear the sound coming from all directions. When he pinpointed the source of the noise, he saw fish that looked just like Barbatos closing in fast on his position. While these fish resembled Barbatos, they were not nearly as big as him and also had the lower body of a fish, not a human. However, the fish swimming in Isroth's direction had that same naturally vicious look in their eyes as Barbatos. There were a total of 4 of them. Ads. Name: Great Sea Barracuda, Normal, Level 23 HP, 7000, 100%. Isroth had dealt with quite a few number of ads so far in RML. Ads was a gaming term which referred to the additional monsters that spawned, usually, during a boss fight. It was common for them to give little to no EXP and drop 0 loot. Ad's sole purpose was usually to hinder players in their attempt to defeat a boss monster. While the majority of the time their HP and stats were not as strong as regular monsters, there were still numerous ways adds operated in a boss fight, so that rule may not always apply. There were various reasons adds would spawn during a boss fight. It could be to heal the boss, damage the players, or protect the boss. There were countless ways a scenario could play out when dealing with adds. If the adds were left alone, it was possible that the boss monster could become much more challenging to deal with throughout the fight. While adds did not spawn in every boss fight, it was still a common occurrence in numerous fights. Therefore, players should always be prepared to deal with adds accordingly if they appear in the middle of a boss fight. Although the Great Sea Barracudas were only normal monsters with 7,000 HP, Isroth did not underestimate them for a single moment. He had already made that mistake once against his fight with Equilor back in the Shadahi realm. He decided it was best to break off his attack against Barbatos and deal with the Great Sea Barracudas before resuming his assault. BZZZT, BZZZT. The electricity around Isrotha's blade of lightning started to become more active, releasing a crackling noise that was soon followed by a loud crash that sounded as if lightning was descending from the skies above. Lightning bolts began to rain down within the surrounding 15 meters of Isroth as his movements quickened and his attacks became more fierce. Barbatos did not sit still and wait for Isroth to launch his attack. The sea creature moved forward at a speed that was at least 50% faster than its original pace. Even though Barbatos was not completely submerged in water, he was still capable of gaining such a massive agility boost. Since Isrotha's flickering steps had already run out, he used Lightning Field to maintain his speed advantage over Barbatos. With the effects of Lightning Field and Hellfire Rampage, Isrotha's agility was sitting at a steady 600 points. Isroth's agility was evenly matched with Barbatos even with its newly found speed. However, Isrotha's reaction times and battle experience were far superior to Barbatos, giving him an advantage over the sea creature. Isroth had a simple solution on how to deal with the Great Sea Barracudas. The blade of lightning within his hand started emitting an oppressive aura. In a flash, Isroth was already before the first of the Great Sea Barracudas as his sword slashed out with amazing precision, cutting cleanly through the sea creature's head. Critical hit. 9, 288 Battle Alert. The cooldown time for your skill First Baneful Sword Destruction has been reset. Thanks to the reset from Isrotha's First Baneful Sword Destruction, it made dealing with the adds relatively easy. The increased damage due to sea creatures being weak to lightning-based attacks also helped to smooth things over without issue. Even though Barbatos' speed matched Isrotha's, it was not difficult for him to finish eliminating the Great Sea Barracudas that spawned before they could do any real damage while also dealing with Barbatos. Especially with the paralyzing effect of the Lightning Field skill. It may have been because of his 1 luck stat, but the number of times Barbatos was paralyzed happened more often than not. After finishing off the Great Sea Barracudas, Isroth immediately rushed towards Barbatos. At the moment, Barbatos was delayed for a brief period of time due to the lightning field and was incapable of taking any actions. Isroth did not miss this window of opportunity as he mercilessly began his barrage of attacks, targeting Barbatos' critical areas. Even if Barbatos managed to move, it was not long until he was paralyzed again by Isrotha's lightning field. While this fight appeared to be extremely easy, it was only due to the fact that Barbatos' opponent was Isroth. Barbatos was actually the best kind of boss Isroth could ask to fight. The sea creature focused purely on physical-based attacks and did not seem to possess any ranged or magic-based abilities. Ranged or magic-based bosses were much more difficult to predict compared to physical-type bosses. Of course, there were always exceptions given certain circumstances, but for the most part, the majority of players would much rather fight against a physical-type boss monster. Isrotha's barrage of attacks was quickly chipping away at Barbatos' HP due to the bonus lightning damage from Isrotha's blade of lightning. The extra damage dealt to Barbatos was not small at all. 70%. 60%. 50%. 40%. When Barbados reached 40% HP, it once again called upon some great sea barracudas. This time the water in the room filled up all the way to Isroth's torso and a total of 8 sea creatures spawned. Isroth used the same tactic as last time and executed his first baneful sword destruction skill in order to quickly deal with the adds. However, there was something different about the adds this time around. The great sea barracudas spewed out a dark green liquid after they perished. The liquid was absorbed by Barbados, and as he took in more of the liquid, his nature became increasingly more violent. That was not all that changed, but his agility had increased again thanks to the room filling up with water. However, it was still within Isroth's tolerable speed difference range, even though Barbados was now faster than him. Battle alert. Vicious Barbados has been consumed by Bloodlust. Bloodlust. Isroth knew what Bloodlust was, but he was unsure of its exact effects within RML. However, he was sure that it was not put there to make this boss fight any less challenging. All of a sudden, Isroth felt a strong force pulling his body down underneath the surface of the water. It felt as if he was being dragged down by a powerful whirlpool. Chapter 78 An Unexpected Clue. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Isroth lost control over his character's movements as the entire room filled up with water. A whirlpool had formed out of nowhere exactly where Isroth had been standing when he was forcibly dragged underneath the water. There wasn't any warning to the sudden changes. Also, Isroth just happened to be unlucky. The whirlpool did not have a set spawn point. It could have appeared anywhere within the entire room and yet it chose right underneath Isroth. Battle alert. You have been affected by a whirlpool. When Isroth lost control of his character's movements, it took him a brief moment to readjust his body. However, Barbados did not wait for him to recover as the sea creature sped towards Isroth and landed a solid hit on him. 725 Battle alert. You have been affected by Vicious Bite. Battle alert. You will now bleed out every 1 second for 10 seconds for 50 damage. 0.50 The bleed out is ignoring both my physical and magical resistances. I suppose that was to be expected. Isroth narrowed his eyes when he was struck by that attack. However, he did not panic and swiftly countered with an attack of his own. Most players would be unable to act while inside of a whirlpool spinning so fast, but Isroth was able to successfully strike back against Barbados. 995 If Wes and his party were there to see what just occurred, they would all be dumbstruck. Not at the fact that Isroth was able to attack while inside of a whirlpool, but rather he was able to instantly adjust to it and land an attack on his very first try. It also looked as if he was now unbothered by the whirlpool and could react properly even while spinning around inside of it. Isroth had fought battles in conditions far worse than this whirlpool and managed to come out on top. While he was caught off guard by the initial loss of control of his character's movements, he still quickly adapted to it in time to counterattack. Though his current situation was not looking too good. Isroth had just taken heavy damage from Barbados and he was now affected by bleed out. He could not afford to get hit by another blow like that without parrying, or else he may not be so fortunate as to survive next time. The whirlpool that had dragged Isroth into it slowly began to disperse. However, when it finished completely disappearing, 2 more whirlpools formed on the battlefield at random locations, and this time Isroth was not anywhere near the whirlpools. I'll have to be careful of those whirlpools. Even though I've already experienced it once, it's best to avoid it if possible. After all, I'd rather not be tossed around while going up against this boss monster. Vicious Barbados did not appear to be affected by the whirlpools and could even swim directly through one without its movements being hindered. Its speed was even faster than before now that the water was covering every corner of the room. Barbados zoomed right towards Isroth at an incredible speed. The sea creature resembled a silver streak traveling through the water with 2 beady red eyes filled with bloodlust leading the charge. Isroth removed a lesser health potion from his inventory and immediately consumed it. Plus 150 thanks to the lesser health potion, Isrotha's HP went up to 781. Even though it only healed him for 150 points, it was enough to cancel out 3 seconds of the bleed out effect. Right now, every bit of HP counted. I'll have to look into purchasing some higher grade potions. Lesser health potions were not made for players that were level 20 or higher. They were not that effective against higher level monsters that could dish out high damage. Isrotha's lightning field ran out and his agility dropped back down to 400 points. Thankfully, he still had the max stacks for his Hellfire Rampage. However, Barbatos' agility was now at least double that of his current agility stat. This'll be a bit risky, but it'll pay off nicely if it works. As Barbatos closed in on Isroth, he began to swim towards one of the whirlpools. Although the whirlpools were not located near Isrotha's current position, he was still fast enough to make it there before Barbatos arrived. When Isroth was thrown into the whirlpool, he received the same battle alert as before and lost control of his character's movements for a brief instant. However, Isroth was prepared this time and so he instantly regained control of his character. Barbatos pierced through the whirlpool aiming to shred Isroth into countless little pieces with its rows of sharp teeth. But just when Barbatos clamped its jaws shut, Isrotha's body was suddenly pulled out of Barbatos' attack range. Barbatos changed its direction and pressed on with its assault, but every time it was just about to successfully hit Isroth, his body would be yanked into a random direction making it miss with its attack. Even a curse can become a blessing in certain situations. Isroth was using the force from the whirlpool to his advantage against Barbatos. At the moment, Isrotha's speed was nowhere close to Barbatos. Therefore, he came up with a plan that could possibly even out the playing field. When being pulled into a whirlpool, a player would lose control of their character at first. The whirlpool moved incredibly fast and so it was difficult to regain control once it was lost. But for Isroth, now that he had experienced the sensation once, it was enough to become familiar with the feeling of being within the whirlpool. He was using the erratic movements caused by being affected by the whirlpool to naturally increase his speed. This was something unthinkable and no player would even dream of attempting such a difficult strategy. It was one thing to stay still and regain control one time once you lost it while inside of a whirlpool. But, to do it freely and use it as a way to increase your agility. That was something only one of those monstrous players could do. After getting used to it for a few seconds, Isroth was capable of striking out with his blade of lightning as if he were fighting normally. A few moments after that, he was actually able to aim precisely at Barbatos' vital points. The whirlpools dispersed and then even more appeared throughout the entire battlefield. Most players would dread more whirlpools appearing, but for Isroth it was like paradise now that he was used to it. The amount of whirlpools seems to double every time they respawn. I wonder if there's a limit to it. Now that Isroth had a new method on how to deal with Barbatos, he began to shave away at its HP slowly but surely. 28%. 15%. 9%. It was not long before Barbatos' HP dropped down below 10% and caused it to enter into an enraged state. Battle alert. Vicious Barbatos has entered into an enraged state. Vicious Barbatos already possessed a very high attack stat. Now that it was enraged, it would only become more deadly as the seconds ticked by. It would not be long before even the whirlpool strategy Isroth was using became useless. He did not have a lot of time to finish the battle. Isroth thought about using second Baneful Sword kill, but he was unsure of what he would face after this battle and so would rather save it for the time being. There was also Skagmag's Whale Song, but if he were to use that then he would receive no EXP and no loot drops. That was not a trade-off he was willing to accept. Accept your death, Surface Dweller. Barbatos grew faster every second. Its attacks were gradually making its way closer to Isroth. Barbatos shot right past Isroth, just barely missing its attack against him. Isroth acted without hesitation as his leg was already heading towards Barbatos. It resembled a snake striking out mercilessly at its prey. Isroth purposely waited until Barbados moved in close enough to execute Serpent's Bite so that the chance of it missing was drastically reduced. 240 Barbados came to an abrupt halt when Isroth's foot slammed into its body. Isroth only had 1.5 seconds to finish things up, and he intended to do just that. Isroth's blade of lightning sliced through Barbados' gills, but Isroth did not just stop after one attack and swung out once more with his sword, striking Barbados in the head. Critical hit, .724. Critical hit, .724. After Isroth's second attack landed on Barbados, the sea creature broke free from the paralyze effect. With its current agility, there was no doubt that the next attack it hit Isroth with would be the end of the fight. Barbados accelerated forward before turning its body around. Instead of charging in a normal straight line, Barbados kept its actions unpredictable. However, no matter how much Barbados moved around, Isroth was able to accurately keep track of its movements. Even though he could keep track of Barbados' movements, avoiding its attacks were another question altogether. Isroth stayed still and did not attempt to retreat from his current position. He understood that it would do him no good to fall back as there was no place to go. Barbados arrived before Isroth, but just before its attack was about to land, Isroth turned into a shadow and disappeared from his current position. However, when Barbados just shot past Isroth, he instantly cancelled his shadow movement skill. The sea creature was startled when Isroth suddenly vanished and was confused for a brief moment, especially since it was in an enraged state. When Barbados noticed that Isroth was behind it, the sea creature swiftly turned around. Isroth's blade of lightning flashed out, carrying with it an oppressive aura before quickly returning to its sheath. Barbados was mere centimeters away from Isroth, but its body stopped when it was struck by Isroth's sword. The water inside of the room began to drain at a rapid pace. The whirlpools naturally stopped when the water finished draining out of the room. Critical hit, .3046. I've underestimated the number of tricks this game has to offer. I wonder if Life Essence Heavenly Laws will work properly here. Well, I'll find out eventually. Isroth used first Baneful Sword Destruction to finish off Vicious Barbados, sealing his victory against the boss monster. Battle Alert. Congratulations, you have defeated Vicious Barbados. Battle Alert. You have been awarded 27,695 EXP. Battle Alert. Congratulations, you have completed the dungeon. Sea Palace Graveyard. Isroth blinked a few times when he received that last system alert. This was the end of the dungeon. What about Skagmag's whale song? What about all the visions he was shown? Did he really just overthink everything from the beginning? Isroth shook his head and went over to pick up the loot. There was nothing he could do if that was the way things were. However, when Isroth noticed one of the items inside of the loot pile had a faint glow around it, he was a bit surprised. He knew what that glow indicated. A quest item. At the moment, Isroth only had one quest active, and that was the SSS.Ranked World Quest, The Beginning of Beginnings. If it really did have something to do with that quest, then there was only one possible thing it could be. Isroth was in possession of Vazrak's gift, an item that would guide him to a page from the Book of Beginnings. However, it was supposed to warn him if he was close by to a page, so the chances of the item being a page from the Book of Beginnings were non-existent. If that were the case, then it must have something to do with that guy. Gillador, betrayer of mankind. When Isroth picked up the item, he received an alert from the system, and it was just what he predicted it to be. System alert. January 1st. Find clues regarding the background of Gillador has been completed for the world quest, The Beginning of Beginnings. What Isroth held within his hands was a small purple clam. Out of all the places that could have held clues regarding Gillador, what were the chances that it would be a dungeon that Isroth just happened to choose? He could have spent weeks searching and came up empty-handed. What does this have to do with Gillador's background? Chapter 79 Memento Clam. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Isroth examined the purple clam within his hands. It was no bigger than the palm of his hand and was dark purple in color. There was an unusual symbol that resembled a parade of blades intersecting with one another. The clam gave off a faint energy pulse every few seconds as if it were breathing. Name: Memento Clam, magical item, rank. A usage: this item is used to collect, store, and view memory fragments. Memory fragments stored. 1/10 special note. An ancient relic of the Great Sea that has survived through the test of time. Once this item stores a specific memory fragment, it will be unable to store unrelated memory fragments. Memory fragments. There's already one stored inside. Isroth touched the top of the memento clam and soon after, the clam popped open. There was a beautiful multi-colored pearl resting within the clam. When Isroth tried to pull it out, he was unable to do so. It was as if the pearl and clam were one and the same. However, just a few moments after Isroth touched the pearl, it began to release a brilliant light. The light encircled Isroth and started to slowly take form. It took the form of a transparent screen with static showing, and what was on the screen was becoming clearer by the second. Isroth could not make out much because the images that appeared were too choppy and fragmented. But, he managed to see the image of a man and a woman constantly flickering in and out of view. The woman was holding something in her hands wrapped in cloth, but it was unclear what the object was. How is this related to Gilidor? The image was in a constant loop as it repeated itself after around 5 seconds. Isroth furrowed his brows as he tried to make sense of it, but he did not know the man or woman that was shown on the screen. Perhaps I'll need to collect and store more memory fragments before I'm able to receive a proper understanding of it. However, Isroth had no idea where to even begin searching for memory fragments. This quest was becoming more and more unreasonable. How vast was RML? A player could spend an entire year doing nothing but exploring and still be unable to cover every corner of RML. Isroth shook his head and placed the memento clam within his inventory. It may be that my previous prediction is accurate. Otherwise, the events that transpired while inside of this dungeon and its structure would not make any sense. He was referring to the fact that the dungeon had ended after only defeating 2 bosses, but there was still much more of it left to explore. Isroth, however, was unable to access the other layers at the moment. The memory fragments may reside within the other layers. After all, this is supposedly only the outer layer of the Sea Palace. In order to find answers, I'll have to first discover a way to enter into the other layers of the Sea Palace. Isroth was in no rush as the system gave him 90 days to complete the first part of the world quest. It would not give him such a large time limit if it was going to be that easy to figure out everything involving the world quest. Isroth then turned his attention to the other loot that dropped from the dungeon boss Vicious Barbados. Loot drop: 0.25 silver coins. X2 Merfolk scale. X1 Vicious edge. X1 Cassius's scale legs. X1 Vicious stigma. The loot was actually much better than Isroth expected it to be. He even obtained a second piece to the Cassius's scale set. It was too bad that the set was meant for tanks instead of damage dealers. There was one item that immediately caught Isroth's attention. It was a piece of equipment that he had yet to acquire, a trinket. Accessories were the hardest pieces of equipment to come by in RML, with the exception of trinkets. If a player was fortunate enough to come across a trinket, then they could only be considered as being extremely lucky. Trinkets had an active or passive skill attached to them which was able to benefit players greatly. In fact, trinkets were the only items in RML that players could use regardless of their level. That meant players could use a trinket from level 20 all the way to level 50 due to the nature of the item. Of course, players would prefer a powerful trinket if possible. Since trinkets did not have a level, players could only use the rank and skill to determine its usefulness. Accessory name: Vicious stigma. Accessory rank: Uncommon. Accessory skill: Blood stigma, passive. Attacks have a 10% chance of causing the opponent to bleed out for 10% of the user's attack damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. This damage ignores all defenses. This skill can stack up to 5 times. What a useful skill for long battles or boss fights. If Izroth was able to stack the skill up to 5 times with his current attack stat of 430, then the Blood Stigma would deal 215 damage every 1 second and a total of 2150 damage every 10 seconds. This skill would work out perfectly for him, as it would become even more deadly when he had Flickering Steps or Lightning Field active. Izroth equipped the Vicious Stigma trinket without hesitation. A player could only have 2 trinkets equipped at the same time, though most would be lucky if they were able to find even a single trinket. He then placed the Merfolk scales and the silver coins into his inventory before examining the last 2 remaining item drops. Name: Vicious Edge, Uncommon, Level 23. Requirements: 200 Agility ATK, 80 AGI, 40 Name. Kashish's Scale Legs, Uncommon, Level 23. Type: Plate. Requirements: 150 Defense HP, 400 DEF. 30 Set Effect, 2. The user is able to travel freely inside the underwater world without the use of a Merfolk scale. Set Effect, 3. Grants the user plus 50% bonus speed while within any body of water. Set Effect, 4. The user gains plus 30 ATK, plus 20 DEF. Set Effect, 5. The user gains plus 2000 HP, plus 50 def. Set Effect, 6. The user gains plus 4000 HP, plus 50 ATK, plus 50 DEF. Special note: this equipment piece is part of the Kashish scale set, and when equipped with other set pieces, grants the user extra benefits. The Vicious Edge was not too bad for an uncommon weapon. It gave a decent attack and agility increase. However, it still failed to live up to Izroth's Blade of Lightning. As for the Kashish's Scale Legs, its stats were not too far off from the chest piece Izroth had received from Calder. A tank who manages to collect all 6 pieces would probably be immediately put on the top list of tanks just based on equipment alone. Izroth put the Vicious Edge and Kashish's Scale Legs into his inventory. He still had the underwater world treasure chest to open, however, he could not open it while inside of the Sea Palace graveyard. He looked around the room and noticed that a circular gateway had appeared on one of the walls. It was not there before and must have only appeared after Vicious Barbados was defeated. Izroth walked over towards the circular gateway, and just as he was about to step into it, he received an alert from the system. System alert. Player Luna has sent you a message. Hey, the strangest thing just happened. I was finishing up a quest with some friends when I received an alert from the system telling me I've completed a part of the world quest. Any idea why? Luna had just returned to Amaharp to turn in a quest she finished with her friends. She was startled when she heard the system alert sound go off and realized that a part of the world quest, the Beginning of Beginnings, had been completed. She did not remember doing anything or coming across something that was related to it. If that were the case, then Luna opened up her friends list and saw that Izroth was online. She knew immediately that it definitely had something to do with him. Though, she felt a bit dejected for some reason that Izroth did not bother inviting her to tag along. She shook her head as a light blush formed on her cheeks, trying to clear her mind. He has no obligation to invite me. What am I thinking? She muttered to herself before sending a message to Izroth asking him about the alert she just received. System alert. Player Izroth has sent you a message, just a bit of unforeseen luck. When Luna read the message he sent, she immediately gave a helpless smile. Unforeseen luck. If it were anyone else she might question that, but during the short period of time that she had known Izroth for, she knew that he was being straightforward. Completing a part of an SSS.ranked world quest by luck. Is that even fair? As Luna was muttering to herself, she suddenly felt someone place their hand on her shoulder. Nana, we're going to take a break and go eat. Are you coming with? When Luna turned around, she saw that it was one of her friends that she was in a party with. She had short azure hair with a lovely pair of eyes to match the color. She was very petite and possessed a captivating smile that would make those around her feel refreshed and full of energy. Luna let out a helpless sigh. I told you that nickname is embarrassing, Jia. Jia giggled playfully, but I think that it suits you, Nana. So, are you coming or not? Luna could only give up as she shook her head. I'm going to stay on a bit longer. I have a few things I want to finish doing. Ugh. I've been rejected by Nana, I'm heartbroken. How mean. Wah. Jia was acting overdramatic and making a scene, causing the players around them to look her and Luna with confused expressions on their faces. Luna's closed her eyes and endured the stares as her cheeks turned bright red due to the amount of embarrassment from the scene Jia was causing. You. Don't you know how to behave decently in public? Jia burst out laughing when she saw how Luna reacted and stopped her act. It was one of her favorite pastimes to tease Luna until she reached this state. After all, they had known each other ever since they were children and so Jia knew many of Luna's weaknesses. Bleh. Fine, we'll go eat without you. See you later, Nana. Jia playfully stuck her tongue out at Luna before logging off. Luna let out a sigh of relief and quickly made her way away from her current location to escape the stares of the crowd. A new group of players from Cross Haven was standing outside of the circular gateway that led into the Dungeon Sea Palace graveyard. It was a different group from the one that was there earlier. One of the players yawned. It's always so boring when we have to wait our turn. Can't we all just go in at the same time? What's the big deal if someone else enters? Idiot, since our guild was the first to locate this dungeon, it's only obvious that we reap the most benefits and take advantage of it. How could you even say such a? Just when one of the other players were responding, the circular gateway behind them lit up and a figure stepped out from within the gateway. Level 22. I wonder how far along the top players are right now. Isroth had traveled through the circular gateway located inside of the room he fought against Vicious Barbados in. The gateway had transported him back to the entrance of the dungeon and into the ruins that he was in before he stepped inside the Sea Palace graveyard. Are you Isroth? One of the players asked when he saw Isroth exit from out of the gateway. He came out by himself and the member of Cross Haven was informed by the previous group and their lieutenant that a solo player named Isroth was inside of the dungeon. Isroth glanced over at the player before he nodded. I am. Lieutenant West told us that you would be coming out. Though, the time was way longer than expected. He just wanted me to inform you that if you could not spread the word about this place, he would be grateful. Even though the dungeon showed up on the exploration logs, it was still a bit tricky to find. If possible, Wes wanted to avoid an influx of players. After all, if too many players poured in at once, then even if they were a top guild, it would not be worth it to antagonize the general public. Isroth had no reason to guide anyone to this location, so he did not mind the request. You have my word. He then walked towards the gateway located on the other side of the room. It was the gateway to leave these ruins. Though if he remembered the words of that player correctly, it would not put him at the same location where he first entered into the ruins from. Isroth stepped into the gateway and made his exit from within the ruins of Kashish. Chapter 80. Who could possibly comprehend the words of Ji? You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Isroth traveled through the gateway, he was transported to a remote region with nothing but towering trees in sight. System alert. You have entered the Towering Oak Forest. I have returned to the Towering Oak Forest, however, it should be nowhere near the location of where I originally entered into the dungeon. Isroth swept his gaze over his surroundings. From what he could tell, there was not a single presence within his range of perception. He then reviewed his current coordinates to get a grasp on where that gateway had transported him to. When he looked over the coordinates, Isroth noticed that he was deep within the Towering Oak Forest. However, he would have no trouble returning to Amaharp from this place. Given the distance, it would take him 30 minutes if he walked at a normal pace to reach Amaharp. Though he would get there much faster if he sprinted all the way. I wonder if the 5 cycles pill I placed within the auction house has already been sold. Isroth began his journey back to Amaharp. He was moving at a high speed and had no difficulty maneuvering his way around any objects that blocked in his path. After traveling for nearly 5 minutes, Isroth felt the presence of a single person. He halted his steps and looked over in the direction where he sensed the presence. Normally Isroth would not bother stopping just to view a single presence, however, there was something peculiar about this one. That presence. There's something off about it. Isroth furrowed his brows. He could not put his finger on it, but something was definitely off about it. It was as if that single presence encompassed everything in Isroth's surrounding range of perception. As though they existed everywhere and yet, nowhere but the place they were located at the same time. This feeling reminded Isroth of a similar phenomenon that happened within the 7 realms. While there were minuscule differences, they were still almost identical. This made Isroth curious, and so he began to head over in the direction where he originally sensed the singular presence. When Isroth reached his destination, he spotted an old man with his eyes closed shut, meditating on a large tree stump that most likely used to be one of the towering trees within this forest. There was a powerful invisible force lingering around the entire tree stump that Isroth had recently come across while inside of the Sea Palace Graveyard dungeon. He's meditating inside of a gravity pocket. It appears to be much stronger than the one I entered into back in that pathway. Isroth stopped just before the tree stump and observed the old man. NPC name. G. NPC level. As I thought, I'm unable to see his level. I suppose there's not much use wasting time here. Isroth was just curious because of what he sensed, but he would not bother disturbing the old man's meditation just to satisfy his curiosity. He then turned and was getting ready to leave before he heard a voice sound out from behind him. The pinnacle is unforgiving. Young man, do you care to have a chat with this old man? Isroth paused and turned around to see that the Ji now had his eyes opened. The look in his eyes gave off a deep and profound aura. They appeared untouched by the simplicities of the mundane world. When Isroth observed the look in Ji's eyes, he was fairly surprised. From what he'd understood about this world so far, it should be virtually impossible for something such as this to be replicated within this realm. That was due to the simple fact that this world was severely limited by its lack of spiritual essence. Without spiritual essence, no matter how talented or philosophical one might be, they would still be limited by the thoughts of a mortal. However, Isroth was able to recognize with a glance that Ji's thoughts were not bound by the intricacies of the mundane world. How could an NPC possess knowledge that this world itself does not possess? This is what baffled Isroth. I was just thinking that I would like to have a chat with you, so of course, it is no problem. Ji gave a friendly smile as he held up one of his arms and gestured for Isroth to come and join him on the tree stump. Isroth prepared himself before stepping onto the tree stump. The moment he did, a crushing force descended upon his body, wanting to drive him into the ground. System alert. You have entered a level 3 gravity pocket. This gravity pocket made the other 2 seem like a casual stroll through a park. Isroth estimated that his agility was barely at 15 right now and he could only move bit by bit until he arrived in front of Ji. The pressure is around 20 times that of normal gravity. This old man is meditating under such constant pressure and his movements do not seem at all to be hindered by this force. Isroth kept a carefree and calm expression on his face as he sat down in a meditative pose. Sitting still was much less strenuous than constantly moving while inside of a gravity pocket. Not many can endure a gravity pocket of this level, at the moment. Your willpower appears to be boundless. To travel through a gravity pocket, willpower is the most important trait one must possess. Tell me, young man, who is your greatest enemy? My greatest enemy is myself. Isroth responded without hesitation to his words. Good answer. Indeed, a good answer. Ji had come across a few players already and yet they all answered in a similar fashion. They judged their greatest enemy to be someone or something else while ignoring the one enemy that mattered the most, themselves. To fight a battle against oneself is the only battle where defeat is guaranteed as the end result every time. We seek the pinnacle and yet, the pinnacle is unforgiving. Enlightenment becomes a myth and the myth transforms into reality. We see reality as what is possible and a myth as what is implausible, what becomes of enlightenment that exists as both a myth and reality. Isroth stared at the old man when he asked that question. That was a level of questioning that should not be here. How is this possible? Your question is one that has no answer that is correct or incorrect. Isroth answered. Ji's eyes narrowed when he heard Isroth speak and a look of shock briefly flashed by within his eyes. Do not all questions have an answer to them? Isroth shook his head. Some questions can lead only to another question. Do we dare to label those questions as answers when they do not provide one? Only a fool would believe they have an answer for everything. Only a fool. Ji closed his eyes as if he were in deep thought. A few moments later, a golden medallion appeared in the palm of his hand out of seemingly nowhere. The golden medallion seemed plain and ordinary with no special traits about it. However, there was a symbol placed at the center of the golden medallion that emitted an aura of authority. Ji tossed the medallion to Isroth. Strangely enough, the medallion was unaffected by the gravity pocket. Isroth caught the golden medallion and immediately examined it. Name. Ji's medallion, magical item, rank. S.Ranked usage. Special note. Who could possibly comprehend the words of Ji? An S.Ranked magical item. However, what exactly is its purpose? Isroth read the special note on the item Ji's medallion and furrowed his brows as a result. The special note was stating the truth. There should not be any individual within this realm capable of comprehending the words of Ji. Yet, there was obviously someone who did if this NPC existed. When Isroth lifted his gaze, the old man had already vanished from the tree stump. The level 3 gravity pocket had dispersed as if the old man from before was the cause of it being here. Meeting Ji left Isroth with even more questions than what he had before his encounter with the old man. Isroth set the Ji's medallion into his inventory before standing to his feet. While he still had many questions, he would not learn anything more by sitting here and pondering about them. He felt that as long as he continued to explore deeper into this world, he would naturally receive some answers. Isroth once again began his journey back towards the capital city Amaharp. Somewhere currently within the towering oak forest. Despicable. You had all of this planned before we even left Amaharp, didn't you? The person who spoke was a male player known as Guan Yu. Of course, this was not his real name and he was just a fan of the historical figure who was seen as a god of war on the battlefield. Guan Yu was wearing full-plated armor, but even with the armor on, one would still be able to tell that he was well-built. His eyes were dark brown in color and while he was not extremely handsome, he could still be considered as having above-average looks. Guan Yu held a guandao within his hands and was currently standing in a defensive position, surrounded by 10 other players. There was one other player who was also surrounded and in the same predicament as Guan Yu, a female player known as Ze. Ze had long midnight black hair that reached down to her knees. She possessed a lovely pair of emerald eyes and a body that was the true definition of having curves in all the correct places. At the moment, she had a fierce expression on her face and her eyes were filled with anger. However, even though she was angry it did not do any injustice to her beauty. She was wearing light green leather armor with a skirt that stopped a bit more than halfway down her thighs. She held tightly onto the magnificent longbow within her hands. What's the meaning of this, Grippler? Ze understood exactly what was going on, but she was just trying to stall for time to think of a way out of this situation. While she did not personally know Guan Yu and had only joined a random party to level up, it appeared as though the two of them were in the same boat. So, they could only team up to deal with the ambush of these players and their so-called party, that betrayed them. What's going on? You can't possibly be that oblivious. Ha ha ha, we're robbing you. What else is going on? The player who spoke was one of the many encircling Guan Yu and Ze, the one who she referred to as Grippler. From his sword, shield, and heavy-plated armor one could easily tell that he was a tank. If you want to fight, then fight me fair and square. Why resort to such despicable and dishonorable means? Guan Yu was furious. He did not mind a good fight, however, he did not like the fact that they would use an ambush in such a shameful manner. Ze let out a sigh inwardly, she believed that Guan Yu was not all that bright. After all, why would people who resort to such underhanded tactics bother caring about whether something was dishonorable or not? Are you an idiot? You're in no position to make any demands. You know, it was frustrating having to put up with your headstrong attitude this whole time. Listening to your idiotic sense of justice was driving me insane. Grippler would not even bother entertaining Guan Yu's suggestion. Here's the deal, unequip all of your equipment and hand over all your coins. After that, we'll allow you to leave without killing you. But if you fight back, then don't blame us for getting nasty. Grippler had a smirk on his face. He was used to having this amount of control over other players. You're being unreasonable. Guan Yu erupted in anger and brandished his guandao, taking on an offensive stance. It was obvious that this group would not let them off, regardless of whatever choice they made. Bastards! Ze was infuriated by those unreasonable demands. She knocked an arrow onto her bow, ready to fight until the bitter end. Oh! A fight is getting ready to take place over there. Isroth was calmly sitting on a tree branch over 30 meters from where Guan Yu, Ze, and those bandits were located.